Was a Scottish naturalist and author, best known for his non-fiction writing and his work with otters. He wrote the book Ring of Bright Water about how he brought an otter back from Iraq and raised it in Scotland. So let's move on to the lesson, Mijbil the Otter. So in this story, the narrator is going to talk about his pet called Mijbil. And what is Mijbil? Mijbil is an otter. What's an otter? It's an animal. It's a semi-aquatic animal usually found in the ocean, and it looks like a wild cat. I've kept the picture on the front page. So when you look at that, you can understand what an otter looks like. Okay, so here he is talking about how he got an otter and what are his experiences with this animal. Okay, so first he had a dog. Okay, so after the death of this dog, he became very sad. He wanted to have another animal. So he then decides to keep an otter as his pet. So let's move on to the lesson. Early in the new year of 1956, I traveled to southern Iraq. So in the beginning of 1956, the narrator had traveled to Iraq. By then it had crossed my mind that I should like to keep an otter instead of a dog, and that Camasfiana, ringed by water a stone's throw from its door, would be an eminently suitable spot for this experiment. So what happened? His dog died and he wanted to have a pet. So he then decided that he should have an otter. So why did he decide on an otter? Because the place he lived in England called Camasfiana. Okay, so that place had a lot of water around his area where he lived, and so he thought the best thing for this place would be an otter. So that is why he decided to keep an otter as a pet. So what is eminently suitable? That is best suitable. When I casually mentioned this to a friend, he casually replied that I better get one in the Tigris marshes, for there they were as common as mosquitoes. So he told about his wish to his friend. So what was his wish? To have an otter as a pet. So when he told his friend told him that you can get a lot of otters from the Tigris marshes. What is Tigris? It is a river in Iraq. So marshy area is where there is a lot of muddy area, watery area. There are lots of plants and all that. So if you go to that area, you can get a lot of otters, because otters were like mosquitoes in Iraq and were often tamed by the Arabs, and the Arabs like to tame or like to domesticate the otters. So we were going to Basra to the Consulate General to collect and answer our mail from Europe. So what happened? He had some work. He had to go to Basra and he had to go to the Consulate General there so that he could answer his mail. So in those days, remember it was in the 1950s. So they had to go there regarding their work. They had to get some mail and answer it. So they had to go to the headquarters in Basra. So he said that anyway he had to go there, so he would be able to find these otters there. So where is Basra? Basra is a city in Iraq. So at the Consulate General, we found that my friend's mail had arrived, but that mine had not. So when they went to the Consulate General, his friend's mail had arrived, but he did not get his mail. The narrator did not get the mail. I cabled to England, and when 3 days later nothing had happened, I tried the telephone. So he had to give some message back home. So he tried to cable England. So it is something like the telegram. So he had to cable England, but then even after 3 days, he did not get his mail. So what did he do? He tried to contact his office by using the telephone. The call had to be booked 24 hours in advance. So in those days, you cannot call, especially long distance call to different countries. You cannot call as you do it today. You had to book your call at least 24 hours in advance. So similarly, he also booked his call in advance. On the first day, the line was out of order. On the second, the exchange was closed for a religious holiday. So he was not able to call for 2 days because first day the line was not proper, and the second day it was a holiday because of some religious festival or function. On the third day, there was another breakdown. So on the third day also he could not contact office. My friend left and arranged to meet him in a week's time. So his friend was there with him. He left because his job was done and he still the narrator still did not finish it, so he left and they both promised to meet after a week. 5 days later, my mail arrived. So, what happened? After 5 days, the narrator got his mail. I carried it to my bedroom to read, and there, squatting on the floor, were 2 Arabs. So, what happened? He carried his mail. So, he got his letter and then he took it to the place where he was staying because he wanted to read. But when he went to his room, what happened? He saw 2 Arabs were squatting on the floor. Squatting means sitting on the ground. Besides them lay a sack that squirmed from time to time. So, along with the 2 Arabs, there was a sack. What is a sack? A gunny bag that squirmed means it was just moving here and there now. So, it was just moving as if something was alive inside. So, he saw this along with the Arabs. They handed me a note from my friend. So, here is your otter. So, both the Arabs gave him a piece of letter, and that letter was written by his friend. And what was there in the letter? The piece of note, here is your otter. So, the friend had delivered him an otter through these Arabs. Okay. So, he said, here is your otter. So, with the opening of that sack began a phase of my life that had not ended and may, for all I know, not end before I do. So, what is he saying? From the moment I opened that sack which the Arabs bought, a different phase of my life started. That means there was a total change in his life. It brought about a total change in his life. So, he said that the change remained for as long as he wanted. Even if he wanted to change, that would not be over. So, it is in effect a thraldom to otters, an otter fixation that I have since found to be shared by most other people who have ever owned one. So, what is the meaning of thraldom? Thraldom is a situation where you be under the influence of something else that you like. So, it is a kind of a state like being a slave or a serf, to be held in some kind of a bondage. So, here especially he is saying he was held by the otter. He loved it so much that he was so attracted to his otter, and this kind of bondage he found between most of the otter owners. The creature that emerged from this sack onto the spacious tile floor of the consulate bedroom resembled most of all a very small medievally conceived dragon. So, this creature that emerged from the sack. So, what came out of the sack? It was this otter. So, it came out of the sack and it came onto the tiled floor of the bedroom, and it was very small and it looked like a medievally conceived dragon. So, it was looking like a small dragon that belonged to the olden days or the old ages. From the head to the tip of the tail, he was coated with symmetrical pointed scales of mud armor. So, his body was totally covered with mud, okay, between whose tips was visible a soft velvet fur like that of a chocolate brown mole. So, his scales was completely covered with mud and it looked like an armor, and then between the scales you could also see a soft velvet skin that was chocolate brown in color. He shook himself and I half expected a cloud of dust, but in fact it was not for another month that I managed to remove the last of the mud and see the otter as it were in his true colors. So, what happened? As soon as the animal came out of the sack, it shook its body vigorously, and then the narrator expected that the tiled floor would be covered with mud, but nothing of that sort happened. He is saying that it took at least 1 month for him to remove the mud from the otter's body, so that he could see the real color of the animal. Mijbil, as I call the otter, was in fact of a race previously unknown to science. So, he is saying that he called this otter as Mijbil, and this kind of animal was not known to science previously at all, and was at length christened by zoologist Lutragale perspicillata maxwelli or Maxwell's otter. And so, he is saying that the zoologist renamed this animal as Maxwell's otter or just Lutragale perspicillata maxwelli. For the first 24 hours, Mijbil was neither hostile nor friendly. So, when he took it home in his room, he understood that for the first 24 hours, that is for the first day, Mijbil behaved in a very different manner. He was neither friendly nor hostile. So, he did not behave like a friend nor like an enemy. Hostile means behaving in an behaving with some enmity. So, he was neither friendly nor hostile. He was simply aloof and indifferent. So, the animal stayed away. It was standing very separately. It did not come and mingle with the narrator at all, choosing to sleep on the floor as far from my bed as possible. So, the animal slept at a distance. It did not come close to the narrator at all on the first day. The second night, Mijbil came on to my bed in the small hours and remained asleep in the crook of my knees until the servant brought tea in the morning. So, on the first night the animal was aloof, but what happened on the second night? It came to his bed during the small hours. What is small hours? The initial hours after midnight. So, it came to the narrator and slept in between his knees. So, till the servant brought tea in the morning. And during the day he began to lose his apathy. What is apathy? Enthusiasm. So, the animal did not have any enthusiasm in the morning and take a keen, much too keen interest in his surroundings. So, he did not have any interest and did not take any interest in the surrounding at all. I made a body belt for him and took him on a lead to the bathroom, where half an hour he went wild with joy in the water. So, what happened? He made a belt for this animal and he took him to the bathroom, and in the bathroom the animal was so happy because he saw water plunging and rolling in it, shooting up and down the length of the bathtub under water and making enough slosh and splash for a hippo. So, the animal was so excited to see water, it started playing and splashing all around the water from the bathtub. This, I was to learn, is a characteristic of otters. So, what is the characteristic of otters? Playing with water, being happy when they see water. Every drop of water must be, so as to speak, extended and spread about the place. So, he is saying every drop of water should not be wasted. So, the animal does play with every single drop of water. A bowl must at once be overturned. So, if there is a bowl, the animal would overturn it, or if it will not be overturned, be sat in and splashed in until it overflows. So, if there is a bowl, what the animal would do? It will overturn it. Suppose it did not overturn it, what it will do? If it is full of water, it will go and sit in the water and splash the water all around, so that the water would overflow from that. So, these are some of the characteristics of otters. Water must be kept on the move and made to do things. When static, it is wasted and provoking. So, whenever the water is seen in front of an otter, it must make it move or it must splash it all around. So, that is one of the most important characters of otters. So, whenever an otter sees water that is static, he feels that it is wasted and it almost provokes him to play with water. 2 days later, Mijbil escaped from my bedroom as I entered it, and I turned to see his tail disappearing round the bend of the corridor that led to the bathroom. So, one day what happened? The otter escaped from his bedroom and ran away into his bathroom. By the time I got there, he was up on the end of the bathtub and fumbling at the chromium taps with his paw. So, what happened? As soon as he went inside the bathroom, he saw that the otter was playing with the tap and he was trying to meddle with the chromium taps. That fumbling means he was trying to meddle and trying to open the taps with his paws. I watched amazed. In less than a minute he had turned the tap far enough to produce a trickle of water, and after a moment or two achieved the full flow. So, he saw how the otter was trying to open the tap, and within minutes he was able to open the tap fully and lot of water was flowing from it. He had been lucky to turn the tap the right way, or on later occasions he would sometimes screw it up still tighter, chittering with irritation and disappointment at the tap's failure to cooperate. So, the narrator says that this time the otter was lucky because he had turned the tap in the right direction so that it opened. Sometimes what happened? He turned it the other way, and at that time the tap would become tighter and the animal would make some noises due to irritation. Very soon Mijbil would follow me without a lead and come to me when I called his name. So now after a few days they both became quite friendly. So whenever the narrator called him by its name, he would come closer to the narrator. He spent most of his time in play. He spent hours shuffling a rubber ball around the room like a four-footed soccer player, using all 4 feet to dribble the ball, and he could also throw it. So he used most of his time to play, and especially he was playing around with a rubber ball as if a 4 feet football player was dribbling a ball, and he would also throw it with a powerful flick of his neck to a surprising height and distance. So with his neck he was able to throw the ball to a certain distance and height as well. But the real play of an otter is when he lies on his back and juggles with small objects between his paws. So he says that playing with the ball is not his real game. What he really plays in a very interesting way is juggling small objects by lying on its back. The animal lies on its back and with its paws it juggles small objects. Marbles were Mid's favorite toys and his pastime. So Mijbil liked to play with marbles also. He would lie on his back rolling 2 or more of them up and down his wide flat belly without ever dropping one to the floor. So what would Midge do? He would lie on his back and he would like to roll 2 or more marbles on his belly, and the marbles would never fall to the floor. So he used to like to roll these marbles in this manner. The days passed peacefully at Basra, but I dreaded the prospect of transporting Midge to England and to Companionship. So what happened? He says the days at Basra was quite peaceful. He was happy with Mijbil. But then he started fearing how he is going to transport Midge to England and then to Companionship, where he had lived. The British airline to London would not fly animals. Why he feared? Because he had to take the British airline to London, but then this British Airlines does not allow to carry animals. So I booked a flight to Paris on another airline and from there to London. So what he had to do? He had to book a flight to Paris and from there he would go to London, but because those flights might allow him to carry his pet. The airline insisted that Midge should be packed into a box not more than 18 inches square to be carried on the floor at my feet. So that airlines, that is how he is going to fly to Paris. So that airlines told him he can carry his pet, but then the pet should be put into a box which is 18 inches square, and that floor and that box should be kept near his feet. I had a box made, and an hour before we started I put Midge into the box so that he would become accustomed to it, and left for a hurried meal. So he made a box of the measurement and he put Midge into the box so that it would get used to the box, and then he went to have his food. When I returned, there was an appalling spectacle. So after having his food, when he returned, he saw something shocking. Appalling means shocking. There was complete silence from the box. Actually, he had put Midge in the box, so naturally there should be some noise, but then it was completely silent.